G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to a news update for IL-2. So last night, for those of you who have not been patrolling the forums, the developers of IL-2 dropped their new plans for the future development of the IL-2 series. Now, the original plan was for the Battle of Midway to be the next expansion. This would have been the first time a simulation developer attempted to recreate World War II carrier operations in the Pacific Theatre since IL-2 1946 Pacific Fighters expansion in 2004. Sadly, that has been put on hold for the time being due to a lack of resources and a lack of information on the aircraft needed to complete the expansion, and while the developers have stated that they plan to return to Midway as a development point in the future, that does leave the 2018's IL-2 expansion open. So, if we're not getting IL-2 the Battle of Midway, what are we getting in its place? Well, there's actually a couple of things in total. First up is the primary expansion, IL-2 the Battle of Bodenplatte. Technically the name here is incorrect, as Bodenplatte isn't a place, but the name of an operation. Operation Baseplate, to be exact. But the developers seem to want to stay with the current naming system for the expansion packs. Operation Baseplate began on the 1st of January 1945 and was an attempt by the Luftwaffe to cripple Allied air forces and to gain air superiority in the Low Countries during the Battle of the Bulge. As a late war expansion in the Western Front, as you would expect, it has a great number of the best toys of the war available. But what are those toys? Well, current aircraft listings for this expansion will be the Bf-109G14, the Bf-109K4, the Focke-Wulf 190A8, and the Messerschmitt 262. Allied aircraft will include the P-51D, the P-47D, the Spitfire Mark 9, and the Tempest Mark 5. And as always with these expansions, there are two additional aircraft. These are premium aircraft or collector's aircraft. They come included with the special edition of the game or otherwise can be purchased separately at a later time if you choose to do so. The collector's aircraft for this expansion will be the Focke-Wulf 190D9 and the P-38L. An AI-only version of the B-25 will also be developed for the campaign, and the pack will also include the European Low Countries map, which will contain parts of the Netherlands, Belgium and Germany, although its current size is not yet decided. Now, as always, this map will be complete with Allied and Axis airfields, cities, towns and villages of the time period, and the map will also come with winter and summer textures. And of course, being a Western Front map, new Allied and Axis ground vehicles will also be included, although there is no current listing on exactly what these vehicles will include at this time. Although having said that, we can make a few assumptions on what will be available based on the next expansion that is going to be developed in parallel to the Battle of Bodenplatte. The next expansion is Tank Crew, The Clash of Pokrovka. For those of you who are unaware, IL-2 has actually had player-controlled tanks for some time. Now, their development was a side project developed in the free time by a number of the development team and was eventually included in a free update. In my opinion, the tanks are fantastic, considering they were developed only as a pet project, but they did need a lot of work. Well, apparently they're getting it. The current lists for the tanks that will be available in this expansion are not 100% finalised. There is still a chance that things may be changed, but they are as follows. For the Soviet forces, we have the T-34-76, the KV-1, the M4A2 Sherman, the Su-122 and the Su-152, along with the Ziz-5. For German forces, we have the Panzer IIIL, the Panzer IV-G, the Panzer V-D Panther, the Panzer VI H1 Tiger, the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 184 Elephant, and the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 10 Half-Track with the Flak 38. And of course, there will be a map for Pokrovka. The current approximate map size that they've listed is 100 by 100 kilometers. Now, it is important to note that Tank Crews will not be a separate game client. It will be using exactly the same client as IL-2, the Battle of Stalingrad, Moscow, Kuban, all of the current and future planned expansions. So yes, it will be entirely possible for players to be having a tank battle using these vehicles on the ground, while aircraft from the current and future planned IL-2 expansions are either engaging in air combat in the skies above or are providing close air support for the vehicles below. It will be combined arms. And last but not least, we have the third expansion that will be receiving simultaneous development, Flying Circus Volume 1. Now, the Flying Circus expansion is 77 Studios' first step in moving one of their older and truly fantastic titles, Rise of Flight, into the current IL-2 engine, with a long-term goal of rebuilding the entirety of Rise of Flight within the current IL-2 client. Now, this may not be as hard as you think. The current engine being used for the IL-2 series is simply a heavily upgraded and enhanced version of the original Razer Flight engine, and both versions of the engine share the same base code. So essentially what this expansion will be is a port, updating and bringing the already fantastic Razer Flight, Flight Damage and 3D models up to current standards, updating the textures and bringing them into the newer upgraded IL-2 engine. The first aircraft to receive this update from Razer Flight will include the SPAD 13C1, the Sopwith Dolphin, the Sopwith Camel, the RAF SE5A, the Bristol Fighter, the Albatross D5A, the Fokker DR1, the Fokker D7, the D3A, and the CL2. A new map of France, including historically appropriate airfields, cities, towns, and villages split by no man's land in France, will also be included, with an approximate size of 100 by 100 kilometres. And of course, a large number of ground units and scenery items appropriate for the time period will also be developed. And as mentioned before, this will be within the current IL-2 client, which means again it will be entirely possible for you to take a Sopwith Camel into combat against a Messerschmitt 262. Now, it is also worth mentioning here that while it is highly likely that there will be a campaign that comes with the Flying Circus expansion, currently it looks like it will not include the campaigns that already exist from Razer Flight. The developers have indicated that they are planning on releasing that kind of content along with additional aircraft in upcoming Flying Circus expansions. So, that is a pretty monstrous announcement. So my personal opinions on this, I'm not going to deny that I am not disappointed about the Pacific campaign. I can understand the developers' reasons for pulling back. Getting information on some of the ships and particularly the Japanese aircraft for the expansion was always going to be a nightmare. For aircraft that are so well known, there is surprisingly very little documentation, detailed documentation, on Japanese aircraft used during World War II. And I am a massive fan of the Zero, so I was really looking forward to flying out a extremely detailed modelling of the Zero, but it was more than that as well. One of the other major things I was looking forward to for the Pacific campaigns was carrier operations. So far, everything we've seen in the modern IL-2 is operating at a land-based runways, which is perfectly fine, but carrier ops, and specifically World War II carrier ops, bring an entirely new challenge to the simulation that I was really looking forward to mastering. That being said, it is very good to know that the developers have not cancelled their plans for a Pacific series of expansions at this time. They've just put them on hold and are pushing them back while they work on this new expansion, which is a little bit easier for them to get into. The aircraft have significantly higher levels of documentation, which makes them far easier to model in detail and to the standards that IL-2 has been establishing. On the other side of things, this new expansion, we finally get the Messerschmitt 262 in an extremely detailed and accurate simulation, and more than that, for me personally, I finally get my P-38. I've been wanting a modern, highly accurate and detailed simulation of the P-38 since I returned to flying simulations just prior to the creation of the MagzTV channel. Unfortunately, the best place that you could find one was either in non-combat simulations or in IL-2 1946, which, while absolutely fantastic to fly, is most certainly not a modern simulation. And while the P-38 is extremely well represented in War Thunder, again, not really a simulation. So there was a couple of other things that I wanted to mention here. The current release listings for the Battle of Bodenplatte don't seem to be following the normal aircraft listings as we've seen in previous expansions. As a general rule, all of the previous expansions have included a combination of attackers, bombers, and single-engine fighters, and it was generally a layout of 2 single-engine fighters per nation, 2 aircraft that would either fall into attacker, heavy fighter, or a bomber role, and then an additional collector's plane per nation, bringing your total out to 5 aircraft per nation, 10 in total per expansion pack. This time, however, the Battle of Bodenplatte does appear to be exclusively fighters across the board. So I do also want to add in here that I kinda hope we get a couple more at least collector's planes with some unique attackers or bombers for the Allies and for Germany at this time period. Germany, of course, is pretty well stocked due to previous expansion packs in this regard, but seeing some Allied bombers or attackers would be fantastic as well. I also have to say I'm extremely looking forward to the tanks. Accurately modelled World War II tanks with potential multi-crew, fighting in a 100 square kilometre engagement zone. That really does interest me. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. As always, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these expansions. Do you like the aircraft lineups? Do you like the ideas behind them? Are you disappointed about the Pacific campaign being pushed back until 2019 or 2020? Let me know below, and until next time, click that like button, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, fly smart, fly safe, and I will catch you in the skies.